We now have a bit more clarity on the new EverQuest project. That is EverQuest Legends, the new game that is not coming from Daybreak, but is also coming from Daybreak, a licensed project. And some of it actually sounds a bit deeper and potentially more interesting than what I at least originally thought, because I thought it was going to kind of maybe not the most interesting thing for me, but maybe cool for some of y'all. But I mean, now I'm going to be honest, I'm a little more interested. I'm a little more intrigued, not necessarily just for what's coming in July, but also what's coming in the potential future. Because some of it could be even custom. Let's talk a little bit about it, because we got an FAQ about some of the stuff. But there's also, I have to say on the front here, some bad news, because some of the stuff that sounded cool and great is not so cool and great at the start. Like monetization, because it's not as clear cut. And we'll front load this video with the bad news because that's how it works. And then we'll end with the cool stuff at the end of the video. First, this is an officially licensed project. What that means is that your all access pass through Daybreak won't be working here. That also means that Daybreak is involved as licensing partner, but this is Game John's thing, so no chrono, However, you will need a Daybreak account to play. Let's go ahead and start here with the monetization, because that's where the bad news is, as well as some good. Initially, it sounded like it was going to be a straight to the point subscription, and that's not quite true. There will be a box fee as well as subscription that they have said will be on the lower end of player expectations. What that means, I'm not sure. Player expectations are probably, I would guess, $15 a month, so you would expect that it would be lower than that. And box fees are probably anywhere you would expect between a low end of $20 to $40 would be probably player expectations. I would hope that they would go way towards the lower end on this, because this is an older game. I would really hope they would go low, but I don't know what their costs are, and I don't know what the licensing agreement is with Daybreak. But if there's anything we've seen recently with some indie MMOs that have launched, if you overprice, if you get too aggressive with pricing, you can kill your MMO. You can absolutely kill your MMO no matter what. You can kill it by being too aggressive in your pricing. So it's really important that they get this right to begin with, because if you overprice on day one, people are not going to give you a day two. I personally would have much preferred if they had just gone with just a flat subscription and no box fee, but here we are. And that's not all, because in the initial announcement, it sounded like there was just going to be that, like at least just going to be a subscription and we didn't have anything else. That's not true either, because there will be some microtransactions. Now, they have promised that there will be no kind of pay to win element to this. And I think that's where you're going to have some arguments, because what they have said is that you'll have some utility. So experience potions, and experience potions, I think, are one of the things that people will argue over ad nauseum of whether that's convenience or pay to win. And like I, for one, will argue that if you have bag space, that's essentially pay to win, because it gives you an advantage in a game. But you know, it's one of those things, but we'll see what they actually put into the game. But yes, utility like experience potions will be in. And just to be clear, bag space is not one of the things they said. That's just a thing that I'm using as an example. They've also said there'll be limited cosmetics, which again, just kind of sucks. So it kind of sucks that there's going to be microtransactions. The good part of that is there's no chrono. So if you've been around EverQuest for any amount of time, chrono are a huge part of the in-game economy, and they basically crash EverQuest economies. They are essentially pay to win. They are like the WoW token. They're essentially a way for real money to come into the game through chrono. It inflates everything. So this being separated from that, kind of like EverQuest 2 Origins, being separated from that helps suppress that inflation in the economy, and it kind of is a good way to avoid that. But the downside is, yes, there is actually going to be some kind of microtransaction in this game, and even if this does sound at this point kind of toothless, we all know that shops that start out as toothless don't always continue to be toothless. So just take that as you will. That's gonna be the last that I'm gonna talk about the monetization, but that's where we're at with it. Box fee subscription that are supposed to be lower than player expectations, as well as a limited store that will have things like cosmetics and experience potions or utilities. But now let's move on to the gameplay portions because that's where it actually starts to sound kind of cool and more than what we expected. I'm not going to rehash exactly what the server is because I covered that in a video that I just did. So if you're watching this, you probably already know that. But if you don't know, I'm going to link that video down below so you can go ahead and catch up on what this game actually is and what the actual basis of the server is. It is a multi-classing game and you'll be able to play 3 classes is basically the gist of this. But that video is down below if you really want to check it out. This is if you already kind of know. This stuff is different. While EverQuest Legends is currently launching with Classic and all zones in that era, including Plane of Hate and Fear, it is not limited to that forever. They're already working on Canark, and it sounds like that's not all because there's going to be some customization here. It doesn't specifically mention if this means currently or in the future, but one of the FAQ questions was if there will be any brand new or retooled zones, and the answer was a simple yes. And honestly, this little one part of the FAQ, the simple yes, had me more excited about this server than quite literally anything else about it. The multi-classing, any of it. This part about having new or retooled zones, a little yes, not even knowing how extensive that could or could not be, has me more excited than anything else. And the sad part for that for me is it could end up being not very much. But at the very least, you can be certain that this game will not be ending with Classic, with Canark on the way and potentially future expansions coming after that. You will still get more in the future. This goes along with the addition of new playable races in the game at launch, as well as races that wouldn't be playable in Classic. At launch, the game will include the following races to choose from: Human, Barbarian, Half-Elf, Wood Elf, High Elf, Dark Elf, Dwarf, Gnome, Erudite, Halfling, Ogre, Troll, plus Karen, Ixar, and Froglock. Karen are not going to just be Vashir in this instance, and Ixar will have a new starting location linked to an encampment out of North Row. New races may be considered in the future as well. For the multi-class aspect, you will pick your primary class at character creation. These will be tied to your usual class race matrix. So basically a dwarf, you'll be playing as like a cleric or a rogue or a warrior or paladin kind of thing. You'll then pick your second class, which can be any class at all. So a dwarf necromancer. At level 10, you can then add your third class, which again can be any class. Race and primary classes can be changed at any major city, which sounds a bit like EverQuest's current persona system. But secondary and tertiary classes can be changed without the unlocks. Experience will be slower than current live EverQuest, but faster than say P99. But there will not be hell levels, it's all been evened out. All zones can be instanced, and each zone has 3 difficulty settings to choose from, with harder settings offering more experience and higher quality rewards. Groups are up to 4 players and raids are up to 8 players. There will be no boxing with multiple accounts on the server, and anti-cheating will be enabled to avoid botting. There will be a social hub, which is essentially a separate server instance of East Commonlands Tunnel for people to hang out in, and actually connected to that is something really cool and unique that has never been part of EverQuest at launch before: housing. EverQuest initially added housing in House of Thule in 2010, about 6 years after the game's height. It was pretty robust if somewhat clunky system given the game's age at the time, and it took a lot of inspiration from EverQuest 2's fantastic housing that had released, well, 6 years earlier. But it was pretty woefully underutilized. With EverQuest Legends, we'll actually get to see what it looks like for EverQuest to have housing at the start. It'll be accessible from the social hub of the East Commonlands Tunnel. Guild halls, however, which were utilized by EverQuest players extensively, won't be in at launch. Launch will be coming in July of this year with beta signups right now on their website. Beta is planned for April. There will be servers in the US and Europe, and there will be as many as needed based on demand. And they will be using Daybreak's server infrastructure. And like I was saying, the thing that really has me just really curious about this is that little 3-letter answer of yes about having some kind of what essentially you would assume is custom content. And this, they already kind of have that with having the Karen race, which is not a playable race in EverQuest. That you cannot play Karen in any iteration of EverQuest as it stands right now. Ixar, of course you can play in EverQuest, but the Karen are just their own thing. So having that is already something that you can't do in the live version of EverQuest. But then having the Ixar with their own little custom starting area, some kind of in North Row, it makes me wonder how much leeway do they have with this license to kind of do new things, and what kind of custom things can they do with zones? Can they change zones? Could they, for example, take Mayong Mistmore in Mistmore Castle and make them into a raid encounter? Because Mayong Mistmore in the lore of EverQuest is actually much more involved as you go on more and more in the game. And so maybe actually making them more important early on might be a cool thing. Would we actually be able to have our own custom zones in the game? That kind of stuff has me intrigued to see what this game can be, not just now, but also in the future. How big is the leash with this license? Is it more than it seems? Or is this just me wish casting and hoping that we might see something a little bit different with this than just kind of multi-classing in EverQuest? Is there some more novelty here going to be tied into all of that nostalgia? But if you're looking for something to play while waiting for this beta test, there are 3 games that are currently running tests or will be running tests that you can find out about in this video right here. My name is Redbeard Flynn. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and I will see you all again soon. I have a news video coming up that I'll be probably getting out within the next couple days or weeks. See you all soon. Bye, everybody.